Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest in the award-winning podcast series, OnBase. I'm your host, Paul Gibson. We like to bring different subjects to the series, as you know, with any regular listeners. And today I'm excited. I'm talking with Nick Webb, Global CMO at CloudPay, who, those who don't know, they're the market-leading global payroll platform out there. And we'll be discussing today the challenges faced when navigating change for modern GTM success. Nick, excited to get you into this with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here, Paul. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
Excellent. Well, it should be a good one. So we traditionally start before we get into the meat of the podcast. Simple question, Nick. Can you give us a walk through your background, journey to where you are today?
I've been in marketing for many years, and I won't give you a real-time rendition of my experience, but suffice it to say that I've been in B2B marketing for pretty much all of my working life. Started out actually in technology marketing, Vodafone, Microsoft. And then over the last few years, I've moved into sort of the new high growth areas, which is sort of fintech areas, financial services. And latterly, I've been working for the last 3 years here at CloudPay, for which I was not platform obscurity exactly, but I had a shoulder tap saying, we've got a great role for you. We think it really fit you well. Are you interested? And I was very glad that I took up the interest because it's a fantastic role. And we've been, as we'll see, maybe we get into, I've been able to make some changes which have really had positive impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Our paths, I don't think they crossed, but I was at Microsoft many years ago as well, part of the team that rolled out the first iterations of CRM. So I'm showing my age now. But
you are indeed.
Sounds like you've had an interesting journey, and as you say, stayed in the B2B space for a length of time. So what in particular drew you to the world of strategies and go-to-market strategies? And how's that shaped your perspective on driving change?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I think that the role of marketing has evolved significantly in the time that I've been involved. And, if you go back 20 years, marketing, but we still get sort of tarred with the crayons guys, or you look after the website, lunches and launches and logos, that sort of thing. But I generally think it's a thing of the past, and it's now expected. I know a lot of marketing people are calling themselves head of growth rather than head of marketing. So I do think that the evolution of marketing, the advent of new technologies have meant that marketing could play a much more significant role in go-to-market and in driving growth. That's number one. Number two, the role that I was brought in to do was to help drive that growth. So necessarily, that's where the focus of most of my work has been. Maybe we'll get into it, but CloudPay is an organization that is targets itself growing 30% a year, which is cumulatively is significant. And for that, we need significant thought given to how we create the pipeline in order for our sales guys to go out and close that level of business, or that level of increased business every year. So those are probably two factors that have led me in the direction of go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, exciting growth trajectory there. If you can stick with that, that's pretty impressive. Yeah. So as you look back then over the period, have you got any key milestones or lessons you could highlight from your career that have maybe prepared you for your present role, leading that CloudPay's approach to that GTM innovation? Yeah,
probably two or three things. The first thing is that gone are the days when marketing people could get away with not knowing their numbers. Particularly with the tools that are available now around about digital marketing, but more than that, like their contribution to the business growth. So I would urge all people coming into marketing or at any point in their career, and I say this to my team, is that we have to know our numbers. It makes us more relevant to the business. It means that we are driven by the data that we're seeing and using. And it means ultimately we make a much far greater contribution than doing lots of ads, which is what marketing used to be like. That's the first thing. The second thing is, given the fact that marketing now probably plays a greater role in go-to-market and go-to-market strategies and so on than they used to, that the sales leaders need to sort of work with us. So we need to work with them. Previously, the process was marketing create a load of leads and then get into sales, and then sales run with them, and some of them work and some of them don't. That, with the full integration of sales and marketing, it requires all of us as sales leaders and marketing leaders to be much more integrated, much more aware of how the whole system works, rather than just being the marketing guys in the corner painting pretty pictures. Those are probably two things that come to mind.
Absolutely. And I think going back to your first point around knowing your numbers, also, I think metrics have changed, right? There was a time where B2B marketers just use the same metrics as B2C. How many clicks did I get on that ad? How much increase did I get in my website traffic? But now B2B's got a lot smarter, and there's no point getting clicks and traffic and pipeline from companies your business can't and doesn't want to sell to. So I think the whole understanding of it's got to be relevant, otherwise it's a waste, is definitely becoming more the norm in B2B as well.
I would say I agree with you, and I think it's more than that. So first of all, as you say, it needs to be the right people that are clicking in the first place. So you need to have a strong sense of your ICP, and you need to have agreed with sales what your ideal customer profile is. And then nowadays tools can enable you to target that ICP in a way that was not possible previously. But also the clicks and the click-through rates and, the amount of traffic you got landing on your landing pages and so on are a means to an end. They're not the end. Because previously, I think, in previous situations, great, we had a 30% increase in people landing on our website. Great, but what difference does that make to anybody unless it becomes something that sales can actually pursue in terms of an opportunity? There's a bit of so what goes along with that.
Yeah, and I think we've all been in those sales and marketing meetings where marketing say, I hit all my goals. I gave you 200 leads, and sales say, yeah, but 150 of them were rubbish. And it's overcoming. Yeah. I think the market's changing. And as you say, technologies are helping that get a much more focused on just those businesses that actually are relevant to you and you can deliver value to, because it's not just winning deals, it's the ability to keep them and keep your renewal rates up, which is so important.
Well, sorry. What I was going to say was that when I first arrived at CloudPay 3 years ago, we had in place, I inherited a sort of a marketing engine, if you like, that had many of the features that we just talked about that we now believe to be a bit dated. The objective of the marketing team, by extension myself, was simply to create leads. And when I first started, I did the usual thing of speaking to our best AEs and our account managers and our salespeople and say, what do you need for marketing? And it was always, give me more leads. We were about, I'd say, I was about a year into my tenure, and I realized that actually when I looked at pipeline in dollar value as opposed to the amount of leads, we were bringing in more leads than ever. We committed, we're bringing 1,000 leads a month, which is like 3 times what we previously done. But it wasn't making any difference to the pipeline. In fact, the actual sales pipeline was falling. And so I sort of had a sort of a Damascene moment, and I realized that actually the type of marketing we were doing was not remotely the right sort of marketing the type of marketing that we should be doing. And so this led to me going through a process of changing that marketing engine, working with the sales guys, and this is where the change management came in, to get them to think differently about how we created. It wasn't leads that we should be asking for, it was something else. And so it was like we have completely changed, revolutionized the way that we go to market. And then specifically, I mean, in the way that we create sales pipeline. And it's been a pretty interesting journey with some key principles attached to it. But of course, a lot of it's around change management, both for marketing and for sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good points there. So we went a little bit off topic, so just for the sake of, but we'll get back into the meat of the subject. So why would you say transitioning to an ABM, ABX, GTM strategy is so critical in today's business landscape?
Huge question. And perhaps the best way I can answer it is sort of to come back to my arrival 3 years ago and my realization that the marketing that we were doing was making absolutely no difference to the quality and to the quantity in the sales pipeline. Even though, as you said previously, we could go around whooping with joy because we created 1,000 leads a month. And so what I began to appreciate was that when we were creating all these leads, which is what sales guys had asked us to do, it was like, and one of my marketing directors said at the time, it's like being, it's like having a rubbish tip where the seagulls are having to pick their way through the rubbish tip to find the good bits. And what we meant by that was that we were creating these 1,000 leads a month, but we were not able to, but they were not connected. So when we started doing some analysis, we realized that there were 28 different leads across the globe from Amazon, but we weren't connecting those at an account level. We began to appreciate that we were doing small business marketing insofar as like we were doing loads of point leads. And what we did, we said, we weren't targeting the right personas. We didn't have a strong sense of our ICP. So we found out that like basically, when we arrived at our ICP and applied it to what we were doing, we found out that only about 20% of the leads we were bringing in were in the least bit relevant to the types of customers we wanted to be speaking to. We weren't targeting the right personas. Mainly they were too junior, or they were the wrong people for us to be talking to. And none of this was translating into sales pipeline. So I began to realize that two things. First of all, that we needed to change the way we thought about this totally. But the second thing, and most important thing, why it relates to ABM and ABX, is that we were throwing out loads of marketing and still what came back. We likened it to net fishing, where you drag the net in and you just randomly chuck the net out, you randomly pull it back in, and most of the stuff that you've got is actually bycatch that you throw away anyway. And so what we said is, we call it spear fishing. Let's agree what the customers that we want to target and target those relentlessly and put all of our marketing resources and our BDR resources and our AE resources at those customers. And we will find that we will be more successful, which is the very essence of ABM and ABX. So that's what we did. So the basic process, we agreed with sales what our ideal customer profile was. Some of it was firmographic, some of it was around types of customers we want, what existing IT architecture they had, or existing HRM systems and so on. So we agreed that. We then agreed with the sales guys. They would then nominate a list of customers that they wanted us to target. We then targeted them, including the three personas we'd agreed on, using LinkedIn, using email, using content syndication, webinar events, and so on. And then we used, and this is a critical thing that the marketers of the past didn't have, we used demand-based to find out who and those customers were actually responding to our marketing. And not only did we know by customer name, we knew by the individuals that were looking at our stuff that were coming onto our website. And that formed the basis for the targeting outreach that our BDRs then worked on to build a relationship with that prospect. And from then it became then found its way into the sales pipeline. So that was the basic process we agreed. We put some organizational changes in for that to happen. For example, number one, my KPIs changed from number of leads to sales ready pipeline, and sales decided whether that pipeline was ready. I mean, we would put customer forward saying, we believe this customer is the right size and shape and that there's a prospect of a sale. I mean, sales would agree whether that was the case or not. So we didn't say, we've sent you loads, you haven't done anything with it. We knew that we had to pass a test, as it were, in terms of quality. My KPIs became a dollar pipeline value. We moved BDR into marketing, so there was interlock between the marketing campaigns and the subsequent BDR outreach. We renamed leads signals because it was a signal that there may be an interest in our products and services from that company. It wasn't a lead. You don't pursue one individual. You go, let's say that a company, we had seen that somebody from a particular company come onto our website and download a document of some sort. We would go, it's a signal that company might be interested. Let's not pursue the individual because they might be quite a junior person. Let's target the CFO, the CHRO, and the head of payroll in those organizations. So it was a signal we should do something else, not let's relentlessly pursue this individual who just happens to attend a webinar. So there's so many changes going on in here in the way we think about this. And this, we introduced this about 2 years ago. In terms of the, know your numbers, our pipeline is now nearly 4 times the size that it was this time last year. The rate of new pipeline we're bringing in is nearly triple per month what we were doing. And all of it is high quality, like it adheres to our ICP. Whereas previously, as I said, a huge chunk of what we were bringing in was not ICP. So it's been a complete revolution in the way we operate. And we're seeing benefits.
Very, very impressive. And obviously speaking the language that we talk every day, it's quality over quantity. And I'm sure your sales leaders love the fact that now they've got a pipeline that's full of stuff they can and actually can close and deliver real value to. Because it helps not just with the close rates, right? It helps with the average order value because you're delivering value that the customer will actually achieve. And probably it accelerates the deal velocity, I would assume. But then as I was saying down the line, because the company selling to are the right companies with real value, your renewal rates are probably going up as well, I would assume.
So all the metrics are going up. And the way that we define the ICP, beyond some geographical boundaries about relating to our own capabilities. So, we actually did the analysis. All of this was based on data. So, for example, a couple of examples. First of all, we realized that the one group of customers was converting at well over 20%. Another group was converting at well under 5%. So we said, we're not going to do the 5%. That was a bit of a change for sales because a lot of salespeople want to sort of provide themselves a comfort blanket of having a larger pipeline or a larger opportunity set. So look, you could, if you're going to win that at 5% and win that at 20%, you need like 4 of the lower ones to even remotely get to what you'll get to with the one that is more likely to convert. So that was a bit of a change of like, no, we're not going to target these. By exception, some sales guys will come through and say, hey, look, can we target this one? We think they're good. I'll say, well, they're not ICP. And they go, yeah, I get it. But, for other extraneous reasons, we might stand a better chance. I'm good with that. It's intended to help us focus on the right thing. It's not intended to police how we do it. So that's a good example of a change. Another example might be that we said to the sales guys, you need to nominate, here's the size and shape, here's the data set for your territory. And you now need to nominate 15 prospects each for our ABM program and another 120 for our ABX program. You need to choose them like wisely. You can't then say, oh, there's another 30 over here I want to target. Because you go, well, why weren't they in the original target list in the first place? So there's a bit of planning involved. And that means that the salespeople, in terms of their own prospecting, need to move away from the churn and burn. Like, I'm just going to speak to 150 customers every month, and eventually I'll find one that is interested. Because the essence of ABM is that, and the disadvantage of ABM and ABX, is that you're not basing it on customer intent. You're basing it on your intent to target them. And so you've got to wait a bit until their contracts for a global payroll come up. Some of them may never come up. And that's the disadvantage. There's a sort of a bit of nervousness around it when we first launched it. And I remember speaking to the chairman of our board, and I was explaining how we would change it. And he said, well, does that mean we need to wait a few months? I said, it does. He said, well, I think it was November I was talking to him. I said, April time is when we expect the pipeline to start building. And in fact, it was June or even July when it started building, because their customers aren't coming to you, you're going to them. We did still run some marketing where customers were coming to us. So the inbound stuff is far less important to us now, but it's still there because it makes no sense for us not to talk to customers. It's their ICP who want to talk to us because they're not on the list. So yeah, lots of change for sales leadership and for marketing leadership built into this new process.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a challenge, but getting through it, the results are speaking to themselves. So again, just for the listeners, if you're okay, what would you say were the biggest hurdles? You've mentioned a couple there, and other teams listening may face, because you're adopting this ABM, ABX approach, and it's a complete change for the business. What would you say are the biggest challenges and hurdles you face? So
probably number one was attitudinal, that the old sales and marketing mentality is, from both sales and from marketing, we're marketing chuck leads over the fence. You guys are going to receive them. You're going to complain they're not good enough, and we're going to complain that you're not doing enough with what we're giving you. And so we have to form a genuine partnership. We both have to realize that, like, we need to collaborate. If the 125 that an AE has selected for his or her account set isn't the right ones, then we should change them. But we don't throw them all out, because we just spent the last 6 months like warming them up and getting so they know us. And then so you chuck them all out, you're literally back to starting again. So there's a little bit of the partnership between sales and marketing needs to be more genuine than this otherwise transactional thing. So that's like a sort of latitudinal thing. The second thing is that the use of the technology really helped us with change management with our salespeople. So we were talking about using demand-based or something similar. We ended up selecting demand-based. And of course, I was not initiated into the extent of how good these tools really are previously. Is that, as I said, a salesperson can select their accounts that we want to target. And then literally every day they get they get a feed. One of our A's said, the first thing I do every morning is get up and I look at demand base and see which of my customers has responded to the marketing or has signed up to the webinar or is going to be at an event that we're going to. So suddenly the lights come on And those of our salespeople who are using it are like absolutely flabbergasted. I think it's amazing. And they're saying, hey, this customer hasn't responded, hasn't done anything for 2 months. Can we sort of prod them a bit with some marketing? And you can see the gap between those people who do use it and those that don't use it, because they sort of, they think it's a marketing thing. It's in fact, it's a dashboard for them. It's the A's dashboard. So trying to get salespeople to use those dashboards in a way that's useful, that was a challenge. And with it, then working with the BDRs who are now in marketing. And of course, the salespeople are used to, for the most part, BDRs or SDRs tend to be in sales and they just do what the salesperson says. But actually, the BDRs now do what the data tells them they should do from demand base and says, this prospect is showing a lot of interest. We've had the CFO on our website. We've had this going on. This is the outreach we now need to do. So that was another change. And so, those are probably the two biggest ones. And a lot of it comes down to the relationship between sales and marketing, which is always important.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We've seen it over time that the attitude of sales and marketing teams change dramatically when they start seeing, actually, what you're giving me now is something I've got a much better chance of closing. So it does take time. Yeah. And you hit on an interesting point, actually. We'll maybe touch on AI a little bit later, but we're hearing lots of disgruntled BDRs and sales leaders saying, they're getting signals from technology, which is saying, go after that account. There's no insight onto why go after that account.
Yes.
So they're going off and wild goose chases and spending half their time on the wrong things and then actually making their close rates worse. They lose confidence in these signals and give up altogether. So I think it's a term I put AI without the why. And I think businesses need to be careful that if you're just firing AI signals at people without any insight, you're just opening yourselves up for lots of problems. So interesting that you've had that, you've gone through those hurdles, if you like, and come out the other side. So how do you think that transition impacts the cross-functional collaboration within a company? And are there any shifts required in team dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it requires a level of open-mindedness on the part both of marketing leaders and of sales leaders for it to work really well. And I've been fortunate that for the most part here at CloudPay, that has been the situation. And I think that what helped us move that was the fact that we were using data to prove the points. Is like, for example, there was a view when I arrived that the only people we needed to target in our marketing was the head of global payroll. And when we did some analysis we did analysis on some of the customers that we had won, and we found out that there were 17 different roles involved in the actual process from the customer side. And so that told us we needed to be much broader in terms of our marketing. And the role of BDR was not just to get to know the global sales payroll person more and more and more. It was to get to know HR project managers and all that sort of stuff. So that was a good example of where there was resistance to what we were proposing, but we have the data to prove that actually it would do it. That, this is the way we should operate. Another thing was that, like, go back to the concept of a lead. Maybe somebody responds to an email, that would have been a lead. But again, when we did this analysis of some of the customers that we had won, we found out that we're like between 150 and 200 interactions with our marketing by these 16, 17 different people. That might be opening emails, coming on a website, and the event, webinar, all that sort of stuff. And so there's no way we can have this concept of a single lead. Because that's just not how B2B buying works. So that's another good example where there was resistance to that idea, and we were able to prove with the data. So that what I would encourage marketing and sales leaders who go through this or look re-examining their go-to-market to use the data wherever possible to underpin what your ideas are. Attitudinally, you need to be open and say, well, that might mean that there's a bit of sort of more. Like, for example, we moved BDRs into marketing because it made more sense for it to be closer for BDRs to effectively be completely integrated into the campaigns. Whereas if it's sales, we can't do that. We're struggling to get the BDRs to follow up in the way that we thought the campaigns were set up for. So it requires change, flexibility, and the right KPIs. Like, when I propose that my personal KPIs should be changed to dollar value of pipeline created in any given year, which is like most marketing people would shy away from. So there's lots of things beyond our control, all that sort of thing. But I think that if we want to be relevant as marketing people and part of the growth story, then we have to carry a number, just like salespeople do. So I carry a number, and I'm sort of pushed on it by the CEO and by the board just as much as the chief revenue officer, who's my partner in crime, is on the sales number. And that's, I think, quite right.
Yeah, and it's good to hear. I think it's a sensible approach, and as you're seeing the fruits of the success coming from it. You mentioned those multiple people involved. Obviously, buying groups is a big topic now and becoming a buzzword as well. And I think that's really important, because there will be a time, and we've all done it in sales, where someone you've never heard of comes out of the woodwork and kills the deal. And I think the importance of maybe sales will get in touch with 5 or 6 of those people, but there's going to be another half a dozen, 10 people who somewhere along the line will be involved in making that decision. And I think it's so important for marketing to be able to nurture those and get the messaging out to those. They may always be anonymous, but if you can still make sure they're getting the same message as the people sales are speaking to, I think that makes it much more likely that you're going to get those deals over the line.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agree.
Yeah, you've touched on it already, but data obviously has played a big role in your success. How important do you think it is as you're scaling out an ABM, ABX strategy?
So it basically drives our decision making. My background is my training, my degree is in economics rather than in anything more marketing related. So I'm personally quite numerate and quite data driven. And I sort of encourage and support and expect my team to be equally so. And our campaign managers, for example, on a weekly basis are sitting down and looking at the data. You can look at the data with the tools we have. I think I mentioned previously we use OnBase. We've got it set up so the salespeople can see how their selected or targeted accounts are responding to our marketing. But we can also flip it, of course, and say, well, how many accounts did this particular webinar affect and positively impact? And what should we do more of, and what should we do less of? What's working, what's not working? So we can gravitate towards tools. For example, we decided to double the amount of webinars we're doing because we found that they were so effective in engagement. And so that's a good example of where we dialed down on some of our digital marketing, digital advertising in favor of the webinars, because that's where we were getting the engagement. Previously, my predecessors as marketing leaders just wouldn't have had that sort of insight to be able to make sure that we're putting our money in the right places. There's an old adage, isn't there? A marketing guy saying, I know that 90% of my spend is wasted, but I just don't know which 90%. And we as marketers have absolutely no excuse for that adage anymore, because the data's there if you have the right tools and the right approach to how you use the data you're getting.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And as you know, we get involved in advertising quite a lot. And it's amazing today. You see people who spend all their time and effort identifying their ICP, their TAL, coming up with campaigns to be very focused on it. When they're, deciding what they're going to do, so they've got a clear picture. And then they go and do spray and pray advertising to anyone. 90% of the advertising is being delivered to companies that they're not interested. They don't want to sell to. And I think, to your point, there's no excuse now. We've got the technology.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. One thing you touched on, and maybe just a couple of tips for the listeners, that sales and marketing alignment is a nirvana for anyone. Any tips to make a quick impact on that?
So I don't think there's any quick tips for it. I think that I can't sit here and pretend that it's all harmonious between sales and marketing at CloudPay. For the most part, it is, and we have a level of established understanding about how we operate together that took some work to get to. And then particularly we find it, for example, when we have new salespeople coming, they're used to working in a different way. New sales leaders, they used to work in a different way. And one of the first things we try and do is explain, here's how the model works. And it only works if marketing and BDR and sales are literally all on the same track. Because if we decide that we want to target a different customer set, all the marketing is wasted, because we won't be targeting the ones that you want us to target. So I think it's hard work, and it requires, no doubt on both sides, the occasional biting of tongues. And often I feel like I'm explaining this for the 4th or 5th time now about this is how the model is meant to operate, because it's new. It's pretty, I've spoken to a few people around the industry and, sat on panels and so on. And it's clear to me, which I hadn't appreciated, we are some way ahead of the way most people are working. That's why I'm keen to come on things like this, because we've got 3.5 times more pipeline this month in 25 than the same month in 2024. And it's pretty much all come because of these changes that we've made. So, I would definitely urge people in our profession to start looking at it this way and try and go through the at times painful process of change to get people to do it. But I'm sorry, I don't have any quick hints or tips. A lot of the KPIs, a couple of things that perhaps were sacred cows that we broke. First of all, me proposing that I didn't have a leads KPI that was a dollar value KPI was significant. The second thing is we stopped calling leads. We started calling them signals, because lead implies that you follow that lead, whereas the idea is the signal just gives you an indication that company may be interested in you. Very different thing. We stopped doing attribution. So at one point we said, has the lead been generated by the salesperson? Has it been generated by alliances team? Has it been generated by marketing? Or was it something else again? Because when we did the analysis I talked about, it showed that all 4 of those so-called lead sources were having an impact. And so it was just, all it was doing was just causing internal arguments that had no value whatsoever. And so we said, let's not do it. So I own the pipeline KPI, the overall one, and I enlist the help of my colleagues in departments that not necessarily in marketing in order to make that happen. And that's quite a big thing. I think I learned that I was at some lunch and another CMO was talking about this, and she said, we just stopped doing it. And straight away, the fighting stopped. It was remarkable. I mean, we just as a worth noting, we do attribution at campaign level. So we need to know whether a particular campaign or a particular part of a campaign has contributed. So we do multi-touch point attribution. But what we don't do is at an organizational level, this is what the salesperson brought in versus marketing. It has no value and is irrelevant to the way that companies buy.
Yeah, I think very valid points. I mean, I think you probably touched on some of the first steps you took, but if you've got a listener on the call now who's because you've got a very compelling story and decides absolutely we're doing this, would you give any indication of what you think the first steps an organization should change if they want to transition to that strategy?
So the first thing I did was that I called the CRO of Account Web at the time, and I said, I'm looking at the numbers and the pipelines are going down. The amount of pipeline we're creating is falling, not going up, despite the thousands of leads. So we've got a problem where we need to change what we're doing. So that was number one, is the recognition that what we're doing isn't working. Even within my own team, people will say, oh, Nick, we're causing problem. We just need the campaigns to sort of grow a bit. I said, no, the model is wrong. We have to be able to recognize that we're not doing the right thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we did, and we did get a group of sales and marketing leaders together, but one of the first things we did was to agree on what our ICP was. And you would think it's so basic, but if sales have a different view to alliances, to have a different view, to marketing have a different view, you're never going to succeed. That is the foundation. Once you're agreed on that, then even if you're not doing ABX or ABM style marketing, you can at least attune your net fishing marketing to that ICP. And that's the sort of the beginnings of that was providing the foundation for us to then move on and work out how we develop this more sophisticated models. In terms of first steps, I'm on recognition as a problem, a bit of ownership. And it's like, yeah, what we're doing isn't working. We take some doing and then agreeing what does a good customer look like?
Yeah, excellent tips there. And it sounded like the CRO was on board, but there are always detractors in these things. And have you got any ideas or examples of where a business can overcome that resistance to change?
So, yeah, no, you're quite right. It's like, it was good that the CRO was working with at the time, and now subsequently a new one is really open to the model, and we work really closely together. But, typically in these types of change scenarios, in my experience, there's 3 groups. There's the irredeemably resistant. So they're a difficult group to deal with, particularly if they're often very experienced salespeople who have been around, but their ideas of how marketing and pipeline generation should be done are rooted firmly in 1997. And that is a challenging area because they're good salespeople and they're well regarded in the industry. Then there's the sort of the persuadable, which is most people. And then there's those that, of course, are going to be the advocates for you. And I'm talking about salespeople in particular. We use the advocates, like a couple of salespeople, when we showed the demand base, for example, and we put up their data, and oh my goodness, this is like amazing. And we use those as our advocates within the sales community to say, here's how I do it. We set up calls and so on. The middle group the persuadable group is normally okay, so long as you can provide results. The caveat being, as we touched on earlier, that with ABM and ABX, sometimes there's a bit of a wait whilst you build the engagement and the momentum within your program. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking at the time, if I'm honest. But of course, those guys are now like, they might be wildly enthusiastic about all these changes we've made, but they can certainly see the result. And then there's the irredeemably hostile to it because they just don't think that's the right way to do things. And fortunately, there are less and less of them. And I think that they didn't particularly engage. And as a result, they didn't get the benefits that their colleagues were getting, which is a shame for them, really, because this is all driven by technologies that we didn't previously have. I mean, that's really ultimately, I'm mainly thinking, our thinking is evolved, but it's enabled by the technologies of the likes of demand-based and similar systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it in real time. I've sat in on customers' sales and marketing meetings or just sales meetings where there's the 3 or 4 champions who are utilizing the stuff today and having a conversation with them and understanding, I'm going to go and do this. I'm targeting to this company because they've done X, Y, and Z, showed this insight. They came to our website and saw that, and they're at this stage in the buyer journey. And others sitting there going, why can't I have that information? So it really is a find your champions and then they'll help you internally. So yeah, again, really good advice. Thank you. It sounds like Cloud, I'll get it right eventually. CloudPay are having a great time and things are going in the right direction. But we know the economic climate is pretty challenging right now. And for some, resources and budgets are limited. How can you get going if you have those?
So I'll start by saying that we're pretty fortunate at CloudPay that within reason, we get the resources that we ask for. And one of the reasons that we get them is because we're reasonable in what we ask for. So we've been fortunate from that perspective. But I think that my realization that we need to change from the net fishing approach to the spear fishing approach was driven at least in part by the fact that if we wanted to continue to grow 30%, the compound effect of that, it gets bigger and bigger. But the net fishing approach just isn't scalable. You can't just keep going off and asking for more and more and more money because you get diminishing returns. You can't just put more money into Google search and think you're going to get a commensurate amount more leads. You've got to be more thoughtful and more intentional and more scientific about it. So, if there are people, or no doubt there are, we will have other constraints to a greater or lesser degree. My view would be you're far better targeting an agreed set of prospects, customers with your sales guys than you are splatting out a load of marketing and hoping good stuff comes back. Because the tools are there, even simple things like LinkedIn, targeting algorithms are pretty good now. They're not as good as we'd like them to be for reasons that are obvious, but as marketers, they're pretty good. Content syndication really works for us. Even email, not in its own right, but as a means to an end of inviting people to webinars or to events and so on. All these tools are now pretty much more precise than they were even a few years ago. So I would encourage people to, particularly if you're in B, as we are for large enterprises, then you don't need to win that many enterprises in a year to hit your number. If you're in B2B, like very small businesses, 1 to 5 employees, that's probably a little bit different, and you wouldn't use ABM or ABX techniques for that group.
Again, really, really good points. And it's funny actually because I have more and more conversations with sales leaders these days around ABM, ABX, and of course those acronyms make them initially think that's not for us. That's a marketing play. But actually, what you've just described, then the ability to help marketing ensure that everything they give you is stuff that's relevant for your sales team at close more. All of a sudden, well, also want that from a sales leadership perspective. Help me is definitely a change we've seen over the last probably 18 months, actually. It's interesting, but sales are now demanding this as much as marketing are.
They are. Interestingly, when we were thinking about how we manage the change and the transition that we're talking about, especially for salespeople, We did at one point, and it never really latched on, but we did at one point rename it account-based selling for the very reason that you're talking about. Is that like salespeople will say, okay, we're doing account-based selling, which is targeting a particular account based on their merits. And both sales and marketing and BDR are jointly targeting it, simply to try and remove the notion that this is something that marketing is doing. And I think even the word ABX helps because it's not account-based marketing. And we sort of name, I think, significant things things like that are more significant than they can see. And like, for example, I remember presenting at the sales kickoff about how this new system was going to work. And it was positioned by me, and I think it's not untruthful, that like the purpose of account-based marketing and ABX is to put the salesperson in the driving seat. It's the salesperson that chooses their list of customers that you want us to target, rather than us deciding for ourselves and you get what we give you. It's the salesperson that can go on to demand base and see those customers or prospects who are responding to the marketing and then work with the BDR to build an outreach plan. And it's the salesperson that decides where they're putting their own time in terms of developing it. So, in a sense, I don't know why whoever invented ABM is a genius. Whoever called it account-based marketing is not so much.
No, very, very fair point. And I've heard ABM has turned into ABX and GTM,
yes.
revenue ops, all sorts of different things. I think the latest one I heard is BGM, buyer group marketing. Whatever we call it, I think if you're not doing it that way, I think you're missing a trick in the B2B way. I normally at this stage, Nick, I would ask you to look back over the years and share an example of a successful transformation you've done, but you've just spent about 25, 30 minutes talking about a fantastic transformation you've had at CloudPay. So I don't know if there's anything else you could add to that.
I mean, I would just say that in this, I would say that I've driven the transformation. The intellectual contribution about how we should do things better has come from a number of people. Hopefully they'll listen to this. They know who they are. Some of the sales managers, some of the sales people, some of the marketing managers, some of the marketing people. We've used a couple of, really good agencies. There's an agency called Modern, who we've used a fair bit for a number of things. And a lot of the thinking that went into this came from them. So I think that I get the advantage that I come and sit on a call for an hour or so and explain what a brilliant job I've done. But actually, it's not true at all. I perhaps provided the environment where other people have done a brilliant job. Certainly, all the thinking didn't come from me. And it's a horrible trite phrase, but it does take a village to bring something like this into being. There were times when I was exasperated that we were getting resistance to what we were trying to do, which didn't seem logical to me. But we're there now. So that'd be one thing. The second thing that I'm starting to become conscious of is that now we've established this way of working that's been so successful. The danger for us and maybe for me as an individual is that I become complacent. So the next thing is what now? AI is an obvious route for us to start making use of, but like, do we need to change the ICP? Do we need to change the way we operate? So otherwise, I'll become the guy that's rooted in 1997.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think that evolution is important. And you hit the nail on the head. It's the collaboration between the different parts of the business. If there's any one of those that isn't involved, it doesn't work. So really a really good way of describing it there. So looking forward then, so the market we're in is constantly evolving. As you look to the future, there are any trends or innovations you think that's going to shape what happens next in the ABM, ABX, GTM, whatever we call it, strategies?
I think how we use AI is a thing that we as marketing leaders need to put our minds to. There's, some of the more obvious things, using ChatGPT to help you with writing copy or whatever. Many of us already do it. I saw a couple of presentations earlier on in the year, and I forget the name of the marketing guy, and he has his team using AI to do stuff that's miles ahead of what we're doing. So I think that I need to put my mind to, and my team's mind to, how we make better use of AI. And we are using it a lot, but we're using it to do things that we already do better and more efficiently, rather than to do new things. And I think that's where the opportunity will lie. But it's not clear to me what those things are. That's probably the most obvious one. And the other thing is that it starts to vex me now as this 30% year-on-year thing starts to hit is how upwardly scalable is ABM, ABX? Because the point of it is that you narrow down on a smaller group of subset of prospects you want to target. And as your desire to grow and maybe a number of salespeople you need support grows, at what point does it just become mass marketing that you happen to be calling ABX? That's something that we're trying to put our minds to about how do we maintain the exclusivity that comes with ABM and ABX and the white glove treatment for ABM in particular at scale, because it's supposed to be slightly counterintuitive. And if anybody's listening to this as the answer, then I'd love to hear from them, because I don't have it yet.
That is a really interesting topic. And, that, a lot of the technologies allow you to personalize by industry, by region. So is that sufficient as you scale it up, or does it need more? But interesting to see where it goes. And AI, I mean, as you know, OnBase has got a load of AI agents now. Ours is focused on one of those time-consuming, manually intensive tasks that take marketers away from doing marketing. Let's put AI to do that, and I think that's really effective. So we'll see where it goes. But AI is here to stay, and we'll all start utilising it in the right ways as time comes on, I'm sure.
No doubt.
So, but you sound like someone who consumes lots of content and books and all that sort of stuff. So, are there any book, blog, newsletter, podcast you'd recommend our listeners should look out for?
Well, obviously, OnBase. Disappointingly, because I saw that you were going to ask me this question in the briefing. The answer is no. If you change the question, say, well, how do you learn on stuff? The answer is I learn from other people. I've said just now that the ideas that came to this go-to-market model that we now have came from a diversity of people within our own organization, and actually some external agencies. I do like to speak to agencies regularly. Some of the questions you're asking me, how do you think we should be using AI? And most agencies, marketing-related agencies, are happy to have a chat, a no-commitments chat. And so that's probably how I learn. So from colleagues and from external agencies. Perhaps I need to do a bit more reading than I do, but it's time-consuming.
I put you and I in the old school, nothing to do with age, by the way. But we still can't get better than speaking to someone face-to-face or on the phone or like we are now. So I agree. Yeah. Nick, you've been an awesome guest. And I'm going to be, I think, fair to say, we should definitely look at doing a follow-up, because what you've given us is some really good real-world scenarios, and I'm sure there's room for a follow-up session. But right now, I'm going to be cheeky and ask if I can. Could you share the names of any inspirational people in the B2B space you recommend we should have as future guests?
Oh, gosh, you're able to do this on camera, do you?
You don't have to. So,
who should I say? Kate Cox, she runs an agency called Braylano. It's a remarkable individual, should be an obvious one. Probably the CRO here at CloudPay, Tim Johnson. He'd be good for you to speak to. It'd be good to get the sales perspective on some of the work we're doing. And I know that he'd have a different, although hopefully related perspective. So there are a few others. Andy McFarlane, he's an old boss of mine. He now lives in Australia, so he might have to deal with the time differences, but he's a very clever marketer and a fantastic boss. No doubt there's a few others. I'll have to dredge through my ever-lengthening memory to give you some names of people who I think you should talk to.
That's great. And I think from memory, I don't think we've had any of those guests on, so that's definitely something we'll dig into. So I think you probably opened up lots of questions from the audience. So if you're happy to, how would people be able to get in touch with you after this?
Oh, goodness. Well, so first of all, I'm happy to do a follow-up, maybe based on some of the questions that we get. Probably the best way to contact me, at least initially, is through LinkedIn. If people have any questions or ideas or anything that, I'm always open to discussions. We all have plenty to learn, and it's been a learning journey for me going through what we just talked about. So I'm always happy to have the right conversations with people.
That's great. Well, Nick, thank you very much. That was a great session. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope the listeners found that very interesting. Lots of great information on that one. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget there's nearly 600 other episodes out there in the series, so make sure you check them out. But for now, thanks again, Nick. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time, cheerio.